Ali Mendiola. Welcome to Ringler Radio. So happy to have you on today.
Thank you, Matt. It's pretty cool to be here. I've been with Ringler for a while, and I get to be on the radio, and it's a cool opportunity.
Fantastic. So today we are talking about working with Spanish-speaking clients and going beyond the translation. We were talking before this episode as we were kind of getting ready, and we were talking about the different experiences that you have out working with different settlement recipients. And a lot of the recipients you work with speak Spanish as their first language. And that can present some barriers when it comes to dealing with the legalese and the settlement documents. And it can be very confusing and overwhelming for someone who speaks English, not to mention someone who doesn't speak English or may have English as a second language. So before we get into that topic, though, I love for our listeners to know a little bit more about you. I know you've been at Ringler for a few years, but tell me about your experience as a settlement consultant and what you do day in and day out.
So you're right. I've been with Ringler for a few years now. My experience as settlement consultant is basically dealing with different personalities, right? From claimants that have a workers' compensation claim, personal injury settlement, some medical malpractice cases, employment, and I've had the opportunity to work on both sides, some for the defense, some for the applicant. My day-to-day is to connect with my clients that would be attorneys that give me the opportunity to work on one of their cases. And I provide the best, proposal that I can for their plan or options, right, to extend their money and protect them for their future.
Wonderful. So let's get started with this. Could you give us an example of a individual or family that you've worked with in recent memory where English wasn't their first language and how you approached them and what was the important things that they looked for in a settlement consultant and also just really for guidance in this process as a whole?
Well, I had a very recent settlement. This young man, he was about 35 years old, and he fell off a forklift, and he became a quadriplegic. And he was here in the country only maybe, 5 years. So he did understand a little bit of English, but it was not, it was very limited. And when the time came to settle his case, it was very overwhelming, right? The money, all the legalities involved with it, because this is not his country. He was from Mexico, and I am from Mexico. So this is a different country, different legal system. And I found that the best thing that I could do at that time is to just connect with him on a human level, right? So I do have an advantage because I am Mexican and I speak Spanish fluently. So before I even discussed any terms of the settlement, I wanted to get to know him and his family, right? I wanted to develop that trust. So, we met with him a few times. I drove with the attorney to his house. I met him. I met his wife. I met the daughter, the grandma, cousins. So it was a big old family affair, a lot of these Latino communities, they live with family. It's normal for them to have, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa,
Yeah, multi-generational households. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very normal for them to do that. So my main goal was to just develop trust, right? I go in there and, obviously I understand that there's a lot of respect for the elderly. I make sure that I talk to everybody in the room, right? Because everybody's in the room. When you're talking to them, everybody's in the room. So even the little Chihuahua dog is there, right? So, I introduce myself. I ask them where they're from. Try to connect anything that I can associate myself with them, where they can know there's a connection. And then the situation becomes a little less tense, and the conversations are more fluid and more friendly. And then when I know that I feel that connection has been established and they're comfortable with me, then I get to the hard stuff, right?
Hmm.
And then I explain why I'm there, right? I will say, hey, your attorney has asked me to come and speak to you and explain the options that you have available to you at this time after your injury, the settlement from your injury has been settled. And some of these people, they're not very sophisticated with numbers. So you have to be very patient. And, it's not just translating, but it's just like getting them to understand what we're trying to do for them. And I said, well, my goal is to make sure that you are protected for your life and that your family is protected for your life. And this is how I'm going to do it, right? And I show them, like, with this proposal, your medical is going to be taken care of. Your daughter, your wife, they're going to be taken care of. So if something did happen to you, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen to them because you and your family are taken care of. So it takes a little massaging, right? Like getting to know them, connecting with them. But once they're comfortable, it's easy for me.
And is this done? I would imagine this could be done in one sitting to build this trust, and that makes complete sense what you're saying, right? We're transcending just the translation of it. Someone's going to entrust you with ensuring that the money that they're receiving will be paid out for sometimes, like you said, their entire lives. They don't want to just give it to anybody
Right.
with that, and they may not trust everybody, right? Especially if English isn't your first language or you're newer to the United States as a whole. I mean, there's just an edge to that relationship naturally, right? So you build the trust. Is the trust built just right in the room, right then and there, and you're able to win them over, or is it over a period of time? And how does the attorney introduce this topic to them typically? Because you mentioned that you get brought in by the attorney. Are you brought in by anybody else, or how does that relationship work?
So, usually when I'm brought in by the attorney, I've always asked them to introduce me to them the sooner the better. So when I'm working with a catastrophic case or any type of case, the sooner they bring me in, the better, because then they
Right.
know
Yeah.
they get to know me, and they get to know what I'm trying to do for them. So, when the case settles, they're not surprised. Like you have another person here, and what is she doing, right?
Right.
So that's the applicant side. I do work for the defense side sometimes, where I get cases from the defense, and that gets a little trickier just because I don't have the flexibility of connecting to the claimant prior to the settlement. So what I do is I do ask them if I'm able at an informal conference or mediation to get to sit with them, right? And get to somehow connect with them with a little bit of time that I have, right? And like I
Mhm.
said, I do have an advantage because I am a Spanish speaker. So that's my only time and opportunity that sometimes I have with them when I'm brought in with the defense. So I use
Right.
that time the best that I can, right? And like I said, I
Mhm.
never go straight to the legalities of the settlement. I just say, hey, I'm here to help you have your money last as long as possible and protect you and protect your family. And
Yeah.
that's my main goal, right? To protect you and your family. And then I explain to them how I do that.
Right. Excellent. What about in a situation where it may not be Spanish? Maybe it's Vietnamese or Cantonese or another language or culture that may be different from your own. How do you build trust in those situations?
Well, I think we all have to read the room, right? When you walk into a situation, you kind of read the room. Who is in the room, right?
Hmm.
And I think, our culture is a little similar to the, Vietnamese culture because they do have a lot of respect for their elders, right? So I never go into that room just, and talking to the claimant, right? If there's people in the room, I'm going to address everybody in the room, and everybody is important in that room.
Hmm.
Because they do make a family decision. It's not just like them making a decision. This is a family decision, right? And one of the big things is to humble yourself. When you walk
Right.
into a space, no matter what, if what ethnicity, right? If you're, Vietnamese, Mexican, whatever, Caucasian, you humble yourself because these people have gone through very, very hard times. They are hurting. they're overwhelmed, and
Mm.
they don't need anybody there telling them how to run their lives. This is what I have for you, and this is what we're going to do. No, you humble yourself. You listen to them. You listen to what their needs are.
Mm.
You listen to their pain, because they're going to tell you what they've been through, because they're hurting still. I mean, they had an injury,
Yeah,
and
they
it
didn't ask for
completely
this.
right. Right.
Yeah.
It's an injury. It completely turned their lives around, and not only affected them as individuals, but also the whole family dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So it's be humble. Be humble.
It's a very human moment. Someone
Yes.
didn't ask for this. Their whole family's been affected, not just them, right? Their whole family's going to have a conversation about what to do to move forward, for everybody to move forward. And I would imagine that conversation in that room has to be authentic. You
Right.
can't go in there and be cavalier and think that you're going to win them over with just say this is the best product since sliced bread. No,
Right.
you have to understand somebody, what is important to them, and then tie those needs directly to how you can help them with the payment stream that makes the most sense. And I would imagine, do you find yourself finding a completely different solution? Like you have the case file, you look at the case file, you have an idea maybe of what might be, you know, because of your experience, what type of case, periodic payment that they might receive, a stream that they might receive. How many times does it happen when you get in the room and that changes for you? Your preconceived notions or perceptions shift based upon the question
Right.
that you ask and find out. I'm curious if that's happened.
It does happen. That's why when you go and meet a claimant, if I haven't established some sort of relationship already and I'm just meeting them for the first time, what I try to do is just listen. Just listen for a while, because they have a lot to say.
Mm.
So don't go in there and say, I have this, like you said, I have this, great thing for you, right? You're gonna be great and it's gonna work out perfectly. No, I just sit there, I introduce myself, I get to know the people in the room, and I listen. I listen to what they want. I listen to what they're concerned about. There have been times when I go in there and perhaps they have a handicapped child, right? And they're like, well, what provisions can we have in this plan if something happens to me or my spouse, that my son's taken care of, right? So then we go back to the uh, whiteboard, and then we strategize something that is also going to protect the child, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Ali, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk a little bit about this with us today and giving us a kind of a new look into that specific space. It's very fascinating and enlightening to know. But at the end of the day, we're all human. We want our needs to be taken care of. And the fact that you sit, listen, care, I think that's huge, because then you can really personally create what that person needs, and it's different case by case. So thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.